Hey, are you kidding me? Why is mom eating those? That's what my husband said to me on the phone. He had been away for work for 5 years. Our relationship hadn't been great, and when we did talk, we often argued. Suddenly, he came back to the house where my mother in law and I lived. He sent me homemade cookies, but my mother in law started eating them without asking. When I told my husband, he panicked. Then my mother in law collapsed. I rushed her to the emergency room, where I found out the truth. I called the police. My name is Eleanor. I'm 35, and I work at a nail salon. I met my husband Daniel on a blind date organized by my colleagues. I wasn't keen on dating, but they tricked me into going. It turned out to be a good thing because that's where I met Daniel. He works in real estate like me. We bonded over our love for cooking. Even though I'm good at cooking, his dishes amazed me. I suggested he should do it professionally, but he said he preferred keeping it as a hobby. We exchanged numbers and made plans to meet again. A few days later, I got invited to Daniel's house. I was a bit nervous when I arrived, but there was a huge feast on the table. It looked amazing and tasted delicious. I got so caught up in enjoying the food that I noticed Daniel looking at me happily. After we finished eating, he confessed his feelings to me, and we decided to start dating. We dated for 3 years, during which he cooked delicious meals for me. I gained a bit of weight because of all the good food, but I also learned how to cook better thanks to him. We traveled to many places together, searching for more tasty dishes. During those 3 years, we never had any big fights. My work was going well, and I felt truly happy with him. On my birthday, at the end of those 3 years, he proposed to me. I cried when I saw the sparkling ring because I knew I wanted to spend every day with him. I was filled with happiness. Meeting my in-laws and the wedding ceremony went smoothly. Both of them are gentle and kind, just like Daniel. They welcomed me warmly, treating me like their own daughter. They've been married for 30 years and are very close, which makes me want to have a strong bond with Daniel as we grow old together. Unfortunately, we won't see them often because they live far away from us. Life with my husband was going smoothly. He often prepared meals for me, and coming home to a feast always lifted my spirits after a long day at work. His cooking seemed to erase all the fatigue from my day, and he would watch me happily as I ate, just like when we first started dating. After 3 years of marriage, our happy days took a sad turn. My father-in-law suddenly passed away after collapsing at work. Both my husband and I struggled to come to terms with the loss, but it hit my mother-in-law the hardest. They were very close, so her grief was understandable. I didn't know what to say to comfort her when I saw her crying in the hospital, and even after the funeral, she remained exhausted. She eventually quit her job, unable to cope with the loss. We tried to support her by visiting often, but she didn't seem to improve. Each time I saw her, I wondered how I could help her feel better. Then one day, my husband suggested that his mother come live with us. I was surprised by the idea, but I understood that he was her only family and she needed support. Although I wished he had discussed it with me beforehand, I agreed. When his mother asked if I was okay with it, I reassured her with a smile. Living together seemed to brighten her spirits more than anything else had in a long time. To be honest, I was a bit nervous about living with my mother-in-law because I hadn't anticipated it. However, she's a calm and gentle person, so I hoped things would remain as peaceful as when it was just my husband and me. At first, I didn't think much about us moving in together, but soon after we started living together, I realized I had been naive. A few days in, my mother-in-law welcomed me home and mentioned she had done some chores, like hanging out the laundry. I thanked her politely and went to check the laundry, only to find that she had washed clothes I had set aside for hand washing. They had shrunk and the colors had run onto my other clothes. I was shocked because those were my favorite items. I wondered if she hadn't noticed when she hung them out to dry, but I realized I hadn't explained it to her either. So softly, I told her not to wash the clothes I planned to hand wash next time. However, she didn't respond, and I regretted bringing it up. Despite my requests, she kept putting the hand wash items in the washing machine repeatedly. Sometimes, my wet clothes were left in the machine, and clothes I meant to wash ended up in the trash. After 2 weeks of this, I felt like I was being harassed. Whenever I politely warned her, she either ignored me or gave insincere apologies. It felt like a never-ending cycle. I tried washing my items at night and asking her to stay out of my room, but the small harassments continued. When I talked to my husband about it, he couldn't believe it and dismissed it as a misunderstanding. He wished it was just a mistake, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I felt incredibly frustrated with my husband for not believing me. Then, one day, my mother-in-law mentioned she had cleaned the house. When I checked the trash, I found my practice nail tools, which I had been using since vocational school, thrown away. These tools were precious to me, and seeing them discarded made me lose my temper. I yelled at my mother-in-law, asking her not to throw away my tools and to be more considerate with the laundry, accusing her of deliberately trying to harass me. She defended herself, saying she only threw them away because they were dirty and she seemed oblivious to any wrongdoing. Her casual dismissal infuriated me further, especially when she called my beloved nail tools dirty. I kept shouting until my husband suddenly appeared behind me. He was shocked and asked what was going on. My mother-in-law quickly painted me as the aggressor, claiming I was saying untrue things about her. When I tried to defend myself, my husband sided with her, implying that I was overreacting and shouldn't be upset with her, especially knowing she wasn't well. I was deeply upset that my husband didn't listen to me and sided with my mother-in-law. Despite my tears and protests, her harassment continued, and our arguments became more frequent. Our relationship deteriorated, and he stopped cooking for us like he used to. I'd often wished we could go back to the happier times before we moved in with her. The only relief was that she didn't harass me when my husband was home. But one day, he dropped a bombshell. He was being transferred to a new place alone. I was shocked and asked why, but he said he had already decided and thought I would object if he told me earlier. He seemed indifferent to how I felt and brushed off my concerns about living with his mother. I pleaded for him not to leave, but he insisted on his decision, even shouting at me to accept it. He left for his new job alone, leaving me to face life with my mother-in-law, which turned into a living hell. In addition to the harassment over laundry and cleaning, my favorite dishes and clothes were thrown away, and my packages were opened without my permission. The situation worsened day by day, and my husband rarely came home. When he did, it was to accuse me of bullying his mother based on her complaints. I would deny the accusations, leading to fights both at home with my mother-in-law and on the phone with my husband. I was exhausted from the constant conflict. Work became my only respite, and I was grateful to have a job. About a year into living with my mother-in-law, I returned home from work to find her eating cookies. I ignored her and started preparing dinner when my husband called. Although I assumed it was about my mother-in-law again, I answered. To my surprise, he asked if I enjoyed the homemade cookies he made. It then hit me that it was Valentine's Day, a day he never acknowledged before. He never came home on my birthday or our anniversary, nor did he ever send gifts. I realized the cookies my mother-in-law was enjoying were the ones my husband had made. She had opened my package and helped herself without permission. When I coldly informed him of this, he seemed shocked. As we argued over the phone, there was a sudden loud noise behind us, and my mother-in-law collapsed. I hung up hastily, unable to understand what had just happened. My mother-in-law looked distressed and began convulsing, so I called an ambulance. She was rushed to the hospital and received emergency treatment, thankfully avoiding serious injury. However, the doctor's words shocked me. She may have eaten poisonous mushrooms. I couldn't fathom how poisonous mushrooms could end up in cookies, but it was the only explanation I could think of. I informed the doctor and called the police. They arrived promptly and discovered the poisonous mushrooms in the cookies my husband had sent me. I couldn't comprehend why my husband would do such a thing. His happiness when he asked if I had eaten the cookies now seemed suspicious. Frustrated and upset, I informed the police of his whereabouts and returned to the hospital. When my mother-in-law woke up, I told her about the poisonous mushrooms. She began to cry and apologized, admitting her envy of my happiness led her to mistreat me. She explained that my husband had instructed her to feed me the poisoned cookies as punishment for her badmouthing me. She expressed remorse and acknowledged my husband's extreme actions. Despite her attempts to dissuade him, he dismissed it as harmless, believing it would only cause a slight stomachache. I couldn't believe what my mother-in-law revealed. The cookies were meant to be the reason I would ask for a divorce. She thought she was only causing me a stomachache. She even considered eating them herself to protect her son from criminal charges if anything happened to me. Her story left me trembling. This wasn't something that could be resolved with just an apology. She was complicit, and I couldn't bear to see her face again. I told her as much, despite her continuous apologies. On my way home, I received a call from the police informing me that my husband had been arrested. That was the final straw. I quickly packed my belongings and returned to my parents' house, needing to distance myself from the chaos and betrayal. After my husband's release, I asked him to proceed with the divorce papers through my lawyer, and eventually, the divorce was finalized, with me receiving alimony. Shockingly, my lawyer revealed that my husband had been having an affair before he moved out. It was with a colleague at work, and apparently, the strained relationship between my mother-in-law and me contributed to it. Learning this made me realize how I had endured years of turmoil, hoping my husband would return to his former self. If I had known the truth, I would have sought a divorce much sooner. I never imagined that something as innocent as his cooking would lead to such trouble. Following his release, my husband lost his job due to the arrest and the rumors of his affair within the company. The woman he had the affair with also lost her job. Now he lives with his mother, struggling financially due to his criminal record and debts from the affair. Ironically, my mother-in-law now harasses him as she did me, giving him a taste of what I went through. It took me a while to recover from the shock, but with the support of my family, I found the strength to move forward. I decided to fulfill my long-time dream of opening a home-based nail salon using my alimony and savings. The day of the salon's opening was filled with congratulations from my former colleagues, and I felt immense joy seeing my dream come true. Now, working as a nail artist brings me happiness, and I'm grateful for the busy schedule and the smiles of my satisfied customers. Despite the hardships, I found peace and fulfillment in doing what I love.